Hi, and welcome to LabYak, where we explore the science and meet the scientists, finding out what gets them out of bed and excited every morning. And I'm delighted today to welcome Dimitrios Lamprou, who is the Professor and Chair of Biofabrication and Advanced Manufacturing at Queen's University in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And Dimitrios, it's great to meet you here at LabYak.
Great to meet you too, Steve, and it's an honor to be in LabYak.
Hey, great. Well, listen, before we start on the science, did you always want to be a scientist? When you were at school, what is it? When you were at school, what is it? What was it that you wanted to be when you grew up?
I don't think a lot of children, especially from farm village that grow up in Greece, they want to become a scientist. Like most of us, we want to become either lawyers or doctors or to go flights. Yeah, like we're looking all the flights and everything, like aircraft, especially the army aircraft. So pilots to F-16 maybe or something like this. So my dream was that. But of course, I was when I was 12. Yeah.
So how did you end up? You know, what pushed you over the edge then to take a career in science?
I think it was by just coincidence, probably. So I came in UK to study. So I came to UK 22 years ago to do my undergraduate. And I was always thinking like, okay, 4 years of my degree, and then I will go back to Greece. And I was like, come on, a year for the master's, work 1 year, and then you can return with a good experience in international. And one day I wake up, and for a reason I don't know, I start looking for PhD projects. I think because I enjoy a lot my master research project during summer.
Yeah.
And I saw that, oh, it's more here than just theory, and we can do things that we can help people in some point of our lives. And that's how I move on doing a PhD.
Right. So your PhD was in a subject that effectively made a practical difference to people using the science that you knew. Is that how it worked?
I can't say a lot because it was with a DSTL in Portadown. So I can't say a lot about the PhD, but it was, yes, direct of how you're supporting, especially for different aspects in the DSTL.
Yeah. Your specialism, if I could start us talking about it, involves quite a number of different disciplines coming together. How did you end up bringing the different disciplines together in terms of the, I'm thinking particularly about the way in which you've used 3D printing technologies. You're obviously very working in the pharmaceutical world too, and you've made some crossovers that not everyone is making at the moment, and I see that as being something very special that you're doing. But how did you start down those different paths?
I think I'm lucky that I have diverse background, and I want to say to everyone, don't afraid to change directions in your career. So my first degree, it was in biomedical engineering, and then I did a master's in tissue engineering. So I moved more about using cells and understand the body. And my PhD was in completely different aspect. It was aspects of drug delivery, for example, inside. So I start like exploring different backgrounds from the engineering to biological to drug delivery, and then to my postdoc in biomaterials. And I start thinking that, okay, all those is connection. So from engineering to pharmaceuticals. So you need to know thermodynamics of how the drugs deliver and move in the body, which means my engineering background, which is great at the same time. So I think my diverse background helped me to understand different aspects. And you mentioned for 3D printing, for example, like as an engineer, I can modify the printers, and we're using 3D printers, we're using microfluidic devices, but I don't want boxes. I like systems that I can use my hands or my knowledge because I'm not in the lab anymore as I used to be honest now. I want to use my knowledge in my hands to modify those systems, to make it in the applications that were interested. And the different application we do is from everyday experience in life. One of my first 3D printing, for example, it was for vascular grafts for fistula, for hemodialysis. My mom was doing hemodialysis for 20 years, and I can see from first hand what those people go through and what they need. Yeah. And one of the first things was like, okay, let's sit down, let's see how we can use with 3D printers to make bespoke fistulas, for example, that you can avoid the biofilm formation. You can help those patients not to spend a lot of time in the hospitals at the same time also.
It's really interesting the way you've talked about knowing an application in your head that's inspiring you to take you in a certain direction, because so often when we talk about science, there seems almost like a dissociation between the end product sometimes and the practical use of it in society and the science itself. And I wondered how important it was to you to make science something that you can apply in society.
It's very important, and this is what we do. We do also research for fun, of course, but we have to think also, it doesn't mean that the research we do for the society is not fun at the same time, yeah? But we have to think of the projects, how those will support the patients at the same time, all our friends and families. So another project is, which recently we were on the news like a couple of months ago, about the new 3D printing that we did for wound healing applications for diabetic patients.
Right.
And this is again from my family, from my PhD students' families, that they can see the issues of those people. And we start thinking and talking with medics. It's very important to go to medics and GPs and have a chat with them.
Yeah.
Understand what is the issue there, and because there will be solutions, but there will be issues in those solutions, and how you can provide something better, in brackets, I want to say, of course, yeah, of what is out there in the market. If you don't know people that they're suffering from that disease, or talk to the doctors that they're every day with those patients, I don't think we can understand as an engineers what needs to be done. And I think it's the communication is very important in science.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think from many people's aspects, they saw science being used in the last 3 years in terms of the fight with COVID in a way that perhaps people hadn't seen science being used. And it was maybe one of the first times they'd seen some of the cutting edge technologies that frankly had been known about for quite a while being used actually in society to solve a societal problem in the way you're describing. And I wondered whether, when you look at your technology and the technologies that you're working in, do you see a future where it will have mass societal use, or is it always likely to be a niche when you get the type of technologies you're working on?
Yeah, I will start with your point, as you said, for the last 2 years in the start of the pandemic, and we saw a lot of interest also in 3D printing. A lot of people, they were using it, but as a toys, they will not think that can help the society. But in the beginning of the pandemic, including my group, that was one of the first in the UK and Ireland, we jumped in to support by making 3D printing face masks, for example. And we saw that internationally, like the Italians, that they came in to support with 3D printing all over the news. And 3D printers, everybody, all the people start thinking, oh, I do have a 3D printer in my house, but I never thought that I can help the society. Right. So we came together and we had the whole society, especially Northern Ireland, helping us, like printing in their houses, bring it to us to check it for quality, of course, and then put it out to the hospitals that they need it. So that's a good example, as you said, that those technologies like 3D printing, for example, it came known more because they will help in the society in some difficult times like the COVID.
Yes.
Especially with the supply chain. And I think those technologies it will support in the future because you can avoid supply chain issues. If you have the materials, you can print anything you like.
Yeah.
However, yeah, there are printers that they scale up and you can make good number of products that you needed. However, I will say that the future for those either in the microfluidic devices we're using for the production nanomedicines, like the production also for COVID vaccines, or the 3D printing applications, they will be for preclinical or maybe hospital applications. So you will have in hospitals. There are bioengineers like myself working in hospitals. So the hospitals in UK, they have a bioengineers. So those people can use those technologies with the knowledge they have, with the discussions with the doctors also in-house. So you can produce medicines in the same time in the hospitals, which will avoid the supply chain, will also support the environment because 3D printing, microfluidics, they are environmental friendly technologies. And we should not forget about the environment and using sustainable formulations as much as possible.
And that's, I mean, it's a great place. And if I could come back to the environment in a second, you triggered a thought on regulation in my head as to how you take 3D printed medicine, for instance, or 3D printed medical devices, and actually regulate the product itself. Do you see that as an issue, or is that something you're working on already with people, or how is that issue being addressed?
It's already a 3D printing tablet approved by FDA since 2015. Fortunately, it's the only 3D printing formulation approved. That's it because FDA wasn't ready for this, but since then the regulations have changed a lot, especially during the pandemic. The regulation changed also about the 3D printing products we're preparing for hospitals, the face mask, for example, or the FP3 mask need to have specific regulations to go. Yeah. So all this change, I think the regulatory bodies now, it's more clear to them of what needs to be done. Quality, we need also, every time we print and say something, we need to ensure that we have the quality. If we're thinking about printers in hospitals or in a pharmacy store, like some people is discussing, for example, for the future, how you making sure that your quality is always there? Are you using different PAT technologies? For example, you have a probe, a Raman probe that you're looking specific mapping on that. I think this is something that for me is more important. How we making sure the quality and we're making sure we're giving always to the patients the same drug, the same concentration, no issues at all if we want to use it in hospitals especially.
Yeah. No, I can see that, and that's great to know about the regulatory, the FDA regulation already too, and interesting the direction of that. Going back to what you said about the environment, given the amount of waste that's involved in normal medicine manufacture, and I think in the pharmaceutical industry, people often think of themselves as being reasonably in control compared to other industries. But I guess 3D printing and certainly the technologies you're talking about allow you to take focused use of resources to another level, I imagine, anyway. Is that fair to say in terms of the way in which you use raw materials and the way in which you can actually create focused medicine with relatively little waste, I would imagine?
Yes, in comparison with other manufactured technologies, yeah. And if you think about the microfluidics, for example, for the nanomedicines, like if we take in the hydration method for microfluidics, for liposomes, the hydration method, compared with the microfluidics, it's quicker, so it's faster. You're using much less solvents also at the same time. You can also reuse some of the materials that they haven't been used. The same also for the 3D printing. If we're thinking about polymers that we're using it, we can reuse those polymers. Also, we are more precise of what you need. You don't need, like, for example, to make 1 million tablets when you need 99 tablets. Right. But because you pressure machine tableting, it can only make that specific. When with the printer, you can say, print me X amount that I need today in my hospital, for example.
Yeah. So when you listening to what you've just said and listening to some of the things that you're doing, when you look at the next 5 years, Dimitrios, what do you get excited about as being the opportunity for the next 5 years in terms of where your science, the sciences that are crossing over in your laboratory, where can they take us?
That's a good point. I don't know, because I'm always my lab will say that I always have crazy ideas. I will come back always and say, oh guys, I think that will be something we need to focus now. I like doing things that others are not doing. So we like to explore new developments. As I said, for vascular grafts, we are one of the first for the fistulas to do that, for example. So microneedles or 3D printed microneedles, like back in 2018, in collaboration with London, we were the first, and also we're doing on that. So I like to explore new things, and I'm looking forward also to see what the next 5 years will bring for my lab and on the research on that. But definitely everything we do, we look about patients, the patient needs direct, and as I said, maybe someone will walk my office tomorrow and talk to me about a disease that I wasn't aware, and start thinking, that's very good. We can help on this. We're doing something new now with 4D printing that people they are not aware a lot about 4D printing, for example. I'm not sure if you're aware about 4D printing.
Well, I think I was just going to ask you whether you could perhaps explain in terms of, if you think of somebody who's learning maths, physics and chemistry, or physics, chemistry and biology at the moment, how does the basic sciences that we learn at school relate to things like 4D printing and some of the other things that you're doing?
So we all know what's 3D printing. Yeah, we printing in 3D dimension, if we want to call it on that. Now 4D is, so that 3D printing material, when it's coming in contact, say with the light, for example,
yeah.
Or with temperature. Some cancers that will provide different temperatures in the body, for example. So that it will change dimension. So it will change either swelling, if you want to call it, with this is a 4D, or slightly change the structure to try to get in that environment. So if we're thinking about, say, like a cancer applications that they're removing from the body, so the doctor will do the operation, but always they're not going to have always the specific size to cover that hole, if you want to call it, that they remove.
Wow.
Now, if you put something that will expand and cover the area, either because that area will not be a perfect cylinder when you're removing it, because the doctors they have to remove all the cancer cells as much as possible. So that's the 4D printing. So it is the science with talking about, like either interaction with specific fluids in the body, or temperatures, or lighting, like X-ray. So you can put on that, or different, as I said, solvents or fluids. Sorry, not solvents.
So the fourth dimension is effectively time, almost. It's the way.
It is time. Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Time based in the, of course, time will based in with interaction coming with the fluid, because if you leave it there, nothing will happen. If your materials they're not sensitive, for example, in temperature. If the temperature changes, it will change.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. So when you look at the future, the 4D printing, the 3D printing, the novel diseases, these are the sorts of things I think you're saying. These are the ways in which this whole technology is going to evolve. Do you think there's a role in the next health emergency for the kinds of the science that you're working on? If you think of the way we reacted to COVID, do you think that actually when the next health emergency hits us, whatever that will look like, 3D or even 4D printing will have a role to play in that?
3D printing play very good role in the first pandemic. Now that we know what is happening, also that, for example, mRNA vaccines, it work. Yeah. And there's a lot of research also for cancer for that. So hopefully the mRNA vaccines can work for different pandemics, for example. Yeah. One thing that we're looking is to 3D print dissolving microneedles. So hopefully, like, you don't need to wait for hours in a hospital to take your vaccine. You can send it to you, your 3D printed microneedle, in your house, and you just apply it, maybe, I don't know, overnight. It will depends on that, dissolving, and then you wake up in the morning fully vaccinated.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tremendous thought, that if you can self-apply using something like that and without medical supervision, that
exactly,
you've really addressed one of the issues of the last 3 years, really, where we've found it really difficult to deploy the medicine. You can have a medicine, but how do you deploy it, and how do you deploy it globally? If you can address cold chain and also home delivery of the vaccine, that's certainly some of the issues that we faced, aren't they?
Yeah, because for the microneedles, you don't need to do you don't need a hospital, you don't need some medical profession. You can do it yourself. And if you can manufacture those either in hospitals or pharmacies, then you avoid the supply chain issue also at the same time.
No, you paint a picture of the future that using the 3D and the 4D science sounds certainly got real attractions to it, doesn't it? I wondered, as you go away from the laboratory, Dimitrios, when you sign off at the end of the evening or at the weekend, what do you do? How do you unwind from this sort of the high pace of the science that you're following through? Do you go into the outdoors, or do you have hobbies and pastimes you follow?
I'm trying to. I have to say that I'm better off advising my students than do what I'm advising to them. I'm always say to my team, I'm not allowed them to be out of working hours. I don't care about it if they're always asking, as you know, but I'm always saying, no, you have to be here Monday to Friday, working hours, then it's your free time, enjoy. It needs to be a good balance, work and life balance. I don't think I follow that, of course, that rule that like many of us, Steve, I think. But of course, I love long walks, and Northern Ireland is very beautiful part of this world with amazing areas to go for walks, especially, or bicycle also. So I'm trying to do things that I will not be inside my office and in front of the computer all day. Because most of my time I will spend in front of a computer. I don't have the time to be in the lab as I used to, unfortunately, because my responsibilities are different now for my group, making sure we have the research, we are out there also in the conferences as a group also at the same time. But yeah, I'm trying. I love cooking as Greek also. So I don't have the time during the week, but on the weekends, I will spend time in the kitchen and I will enjoy it. For me, it's like a hobby and relaxing, like throwing away or everything, all the stress by cooking. I think probably my friends love it more that I love cooking. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, especially if you invite them around to try it, that's fantastic. Hey, Dimitrios, thank you so much for sharing your science and for sharing something a little bit about yourself too. It's been a real pleasure having you on LabYak, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thanks so much, Steve. Thank you.
Great.